Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Ikemji, and in today's tutorial we'll be learning how to make this pencil dress with side ruffles and a detachable puff sleeve. Now this dress can be styled in 3 different ways, just as you can see it's been displayed on the screen. To all my new and returning subscribers, thank you so much for always supporting my channel. And if this dress is something you would want to learn how to make, then please let's engage and let's get started. So to begin now, I'll be working with 3 yards of trouser length crepe material. This is actually a stretchy fabric. So what I'll basically do next is to place my material on fold, and I'll be starting with the cutting of the lower base of the dress, which is like the skirt part. Okay, so I'm going to be starting with the front part of it, and for the full length of this dress is actually 59 inches, but I'm going to be cutting the lower base. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take away the half length, which is actually 17 inches. Okay, so I'm going to place this, instead of placing it 17 inch, I'm going to place it at 16.2 inches because definitely you are going to be joining this dress to the upper base of the dress. Okay, so the next I'm going to be determining is my hip line, which is 25 inches. This differ in people's lengths and sizes. Okay, so mine is actually 25 inch, and the next length I'm going to determine is my knee length, which is 39. But because this is a pencil dress, I'm going to take away 2 inches and go up by 2. Okay, that is what 37 inch. So I'm going to mark that there and I will connect it. Okay, so what next I'm going to do is to determine the full length of this dress, which is actually 59 inches, and I'll be adding 1.5 extra inches for my hemming. Okay, so after doing that, now I'll connect both the lines together, and then I'll go ahead to take out the body circumference starting from my waist. So my waist divided by 4, I'm just going to mark that there and add my allowance of 1.5 inches. Here I'm not going to be adding a dart allowance because the fabric is already stretching. So down to my hip divided by 4, I'll mark it there and add my 1.5 inch allowance. Okay, so next, now for me to get my knee circumference, what I'm going to do is to deduct 1.5 from my hip measurements. That is, when I divide my hip by 4, I got 9, right? I'm going to subtract 1.5 from 9. I'm going to get 7.5. So I'm going to mark that 7.5 and go ahead and mark my my allowance, which is 1.5. I will add it there. So I'm just going to replicate this measurement down to the full length of this dress, and after which I'll go ahead and connect all those points together, just as you see me doing this video. So I'll simply go ahead and cut out what I'll be needing for the front part of my dress, and then the next thing I'm going to do is to place that part on top of a new folded material. So I'll go ahead and cut the back part. Okay, so now you can see that I left an allowance in front while placing it. So this allowance I'm working with 1.5, which is my zipper allowance. Okay, so every other thing is going to be the same, and I'm just going to cut out what I'll be needing. So ensure that when you are cutting, cut out the exact part of the skirt, just leaving the frontal part of my zipper allowance. So as you can see now, this is basically what we have. So I'll go ahead and split these zipper parts open. So after that, I'll keep that aside and proceed in cutting my front part. And to cut the upper base of my dress, I'll be using a paper to illustrate it so that I can maintain the pattern on my fabric. And as you can see, I've gone ahead to draw my chest line, bust and the half length. So next I'm going to do is to determine my body circumference starting from the bust. So I'm going to measure my bust divided by 4 plus my 1.5 inch allowance, which I'll go ahead and replicate that measurement on my chest line. So after that, I'll proceed in getting my waist line, which is my waist divided by 4 plus 1.5 inch sewing allowance without that, because the cloth is already a stretchy one. So I'll go ahead and replicate it down. So the next I'll do is to connect those points together. And after that, now I'll proceed in getting my armhole. So to do that, now remember I'll be working with a neck depth of 3.5, which I'm just going to, a neck width of 3.5, which I've marked there. So I'll come down by 1 inch over my shoulder side and create a slope to connect to that. So after that, now from this very point here to the chest line, I'm going to get the midpoint of it, which is 3.5. So I'm just going to mark that point there, and I'll go in by ½ inch. Okay, because the frontal armhole is usually having a curved ridge. So at this point here, I'm going to go up by 1 inch, and I'll connect all these points together using a curved line. So after that, I'll proceed in cutting what I'll be needing for this tutorial. And then I'll simply go ahead and open up this pattern, and let's just assume that this side facing us is actually the front part of the dress, and I'll go ahead and label here the left part and the other side is going to be the right. And as you can see, obviously, that this is actually our middle. Okay, so I'll go ahead and extend this chest line to the right side of the top, and then from these very 2 points that I'm just going to mark here is the part where we connected from our neck width to slope towards the shoulder. Okay, so next I'm going to do is to determine where I want my asymmetric neckline to slope into. Okay, do I want it to the left or do I want it to the right? So for me, I would want it to slant this way towards the left. Okay, so this place I just mark is where I want it to slope towards. Okay, so but before I do that, now I'm just going to determine how I want the neck depth to be. Okay, that's the neck depth of my asymmetric line. So I want it to actually be 6 inches, but instead of me marking 6, I'm going to mark 5.5 due to my what allowance, my folding allowance. Okay, and while I'm going to connect this with a curve ruler or your freehand, I'm just going to slightly go up at that other region, that's the left side. I'm not going to go directly towards the chest line. I'm going to go up by, you can see the ½ inch there. I'm just going to go leave it by ½ inch, which will also be my what sewing allowance. Okay, so I'm just going to blend that very well, and after doing that, I will proceed in cutting out what I'm going to be needing for this tutorial. So I will go ahead and place this directly on my fabric now, just to maintain the pattern. That is why I actually use a brown paper. Okay, so that I can get the pattern, because this material has a particular what pattern, so I don't want to waste it or lose the pattern. That is why I decided to use this brown paper. Okay, so I'm just placing them very well and using my pin to support it before I can proceed in cutting out what I'm going to be needing. Okay, so you can see that this is basically what we have for the front. I have gone ahead to maintain the beautiful pattern on it, and the next I'm going to be doing is to cut the back. So to cut the back, I've gone ahead to replicate the body circumference, that's the bust measurements and the waist measurements on my back pattern, just the way I did for the front. So next I'm going to do is to determine my what armhole of the back. So I'll simply go ahead now and get the midpoint of this, which is 3.5. Okay, so once I do that, I'm going to place it there and mark it, but I'm not going to be going inside by ½ inch, just the way I did for the front, because the back armhole is different. Okay, so from that point where I marked there, which is my midpoint, I'm just going to connect it down to get my what curved armhole. So after doing that, now next I'm going to do is to determine my neck width. Obviously is 3.5, and then which I connected to the shoulder slope there, and I'll go down by 1 inch for my neck depth. So after doing that, I'll go ahead and connect with a curved line. Okay, so after doing this, now next I'm going to go ahead to cut out what I'll be needing for this tutorial, and I simply went ahead to place this pattern on my fabric. Okay, so I left an allowance of 1.5 inch allowance, which will be for my what zip. So after that, I'm just going to use my pin to hold that down, so when I'm cutting, it's not going to be shifting. So I'm just going to be cutting out exactly what I need. So you equally remember to actually split the zipper part opened, and after doing that, I'm going to open up my fabric, and you're going to see that I've been able to maintain the pattern. That was why I used the brown paper. So you can see now that I need to actually cut the asymmetrical neck, but before that, I would like to join my piece together. That's using the zipper allowance. I'm going to join them together, and this is basically what it is. So I've gone ahead to use a temporary stitch, which is also known as a loose stitch, to hold them down together. Okay, aside from stitching it together, another way you can actually do it is to use your iron to iron the zipper allowance individually, so you can join them together and then cut your asymmetric. So I'll advise you that you don't do your facing or don't do bias, because you haven't cut your asymmetric face yet on the back. So what I'm basically going to do right away is to place my front piece on top of my back. Just ensure that their wrong sides are actually facing each other. Okay, just the way I've placed it. So after outlining them properly so that they are well aligned, I'll go ahead now and cut the neck out. Okay, so after cutting it now, which I'm carefully doing that, I'm going to remove the front piece away, and I'll go ahead and loosen up this stitch, because I actually used a temporary stitch. So after that, this is basically what we are going to have, and if you open up this side, you're going to see an extension. That extension is supposed to be cut out. Okay, so I'm just going to mark it with my chalk, and then I'll go ahead and cut it off. And after that, you're going to be having something like this. By the time you join the two pieces together, you're going to have something like this. So I will just go ahead now and cut a facing for both of them. In case you don't want to use the facing method, you can actually use a bias, but I'll prefer that you actually use a facing to make the work more neater. Okay, so I'll just go ahead now and cut the facing for the back and for the front. Okay, so this is actually the facing. I've gone ahead to cut for both back, the front, and you can see that luckily enough I was able to get a full facing. That's like a lining for the front, and then I just had to mark where the back is, which is the lining, and the other part will be the front. Okay, so I'm just going to face them the right side, and I'll go ahead and stitch it. Then over to the skirt, the down part of the gown, I'll just go ahead and hem this down part with the 1.5 inch we had. Okay, and after doing that, this is basically what you are going to have. You can see that it's all coming out so beautiful. This is the front, this is the back. That's the two piece for the back. Okay, so I equally went ahead to actually hem the back like I said earlier, and this is basically what they look like. So next I'll go ahead and do is to join the upper base to the down base of the dress. Okay, so I'm just going to flip that over, let the right side touch each other, and ensuring that their midpoints equally touch each other, and I'll go ahead and use pin to actually pin them down and stitch it. Okay, and I'll do that for the back as well. So when I'm done doing that, basically this is basically what we're going to have. You can see I've done it for the front and also for the back, and they're all coming out so beautiful. So the next I'm going to be doing right away is to actually get my ruffles that I'm going to be placing on the skirt. So I'm just going to place my tape where I'm going to be putting the ruffles, that's the gathers. I'm just going to measure it down to that full length, and whatever I get now, which is 42, I'm going to either times it by 2 or times it by 3, depending on how much material I have. That will determine how full my gathers is. And I can see here I've gone ahead to actually cut 2 long straps, which is as long as possible. So if you want your gathers to be plenty, you can times it by 2, you can times it by 3, but here I actually times it by 2 because of my material. Okay, so if you can calculate this now, that's measuring it, you're going to get what, 86, and I went for that to add more inches. Okay, just for the folding at both sides. So the width of my gathers is actually 8.5 inches. Okay, so what I actually did was that I want to make sure that my gathers is actually 6 inches long, but I added 3 extra inches. 1.5 will be for the allowance that is going to be joining with the gown, because by the time you sandwich the front and back together, you're definitely going to tuck in the gathers with it, which is actually 1.5 inch that I gave as an allowance. Then the extra 1.5 inch is actually for my hemming. In case you don't want to hem, you can actually remove the extra 1.5. Okay, that made it 8.5, in case you want to just weave them out. So basically I'll go ahead now and hem the down part of my gathers and equally run a gather stitch or a loose stitch. So after doing that, this is basically what I have. So I'm simply going to go ahead and then stretch out my gathers carefully so the rope doesn't cut. Okay, and I'll do that to the other side of the gathers, and this is basically what we have. So the next we're going to do is to actually attach our gathers to the front part of our dress, but before you do that, ensure to map out your measurements on your front part of the dress. So this is what I've basically done. I've gone ahead to mark it out so that when I join my gathers to my dress, when I want to now sew it together with the back, that's mapping out of my measurements on the front part of my dress will direct me in sewing. Okay, so once I do that, I'll go ahead and place my gathers on my front piece. Okay, this will make everything very easy for me and also for you. So this is just me placing my gathers to ensure that it goes through from the beginning of my waistline down to the full length of this dress. Okay, so I'm just going to carefully place them and use pin to actually support it. So you can see that before I actually placed it at the end of the dress, I wouldn't want it to reach that point. I'm going to go up by 3 inches, because if you allow it to actually reach the down, it's going to rub the floor so much because of the excess inches it has, which is actually 6 inches. It will rub the floor a lot. So I decided to go up a bit so that it doesn't touch the floor, and I went up by 3 inches. Okay, so that is where I'm going to be ending my ruffles. So I'm just going to carefully place the remaining part of the gathers on to that point that I've marked there, and I'm going to use my pin to secure it. Okay, so after doing that, now this is basically what we're going to be having once we have stitched it down. So I'll go ahead, take the back part of my dress, ensuring that the right side are facing each other with the front piece. You can see that once I place it, that direction, that is the white mark that I've made on the front part of the dress, will now direct me in my sewing, I hope you understand the reason why I actually lined that or marked that measurement. Okay, so exactly what we have done for this part of the dress, I'm going to replicate it to the other part of our dress and go ahead and join the shoulder. And this is basically what we have. Everything is turning out beautiful, and this is what the back looks like. So I can easily go ahead and weave the back, and then next I'll go ahead to do is to join the back together. This time around I'm going to be putting my zip. I remember that we left 1.5 inch, so I'm going to work with that inch, place my zip, and then go ahead and stitch down. Ensure to leave your slit open for easy working. And next I'll go ahead to do is to actually cut my detachable puff sleeve. Okay, so you can see I've gone ahead to cut out 2 rectangular fabrics for my both sleeves, so I'll just go ahead and fold it. But for this type of cutting, I don't need to cut all those inverted edges for my armhole, because this is just an attachment and I'm not attaching it to any clothes. This is just on its own. So here now I'm working with a width of 10 inches. 8 inches is actually what I need for my sleeve, but the extra allowance are for the folding I'm going to be doing down and also up. Okay, so that is just basically the extra allowance that I need there. Then for this now, the only difference in this sleeve is just the elastic we're going to be putting on both sides. Okay, so one of the elastic here is going to be longer than the other, and for you to get the one at the upper part that will be on the shoulder, I need to measure round my arm. That's as if you're measuring the armhole. You're just going to use your tape and measure round. Whatever you get, that is what you're going to be cutting out from your elastic. So you're going to cut 2 of it, which will be for the both sleeve. And then for the down part of this sleeve, now you're going to use your tape and measure round your arm. That's the bicep region area. You're going to measure it. Whatever you then get, subtract 1 from it, and that's what you're going to be cutting for the both elastic. Okay, that is for the down parts, which is for your 2 sleeve. So I'll just go now and hem it for up and down and insert my elastic inside. Okay, and you can see now that this is basically what we have. The gown is so beautiful. Everything has come out in shape. You can see the dress is so beautiful and so neat. Okay, and this is our slits, and you can see that for the detachable puff sleeve, it's already beautiful. So this part that is very wide than the other side that is tight, this part is the part that will be at the shoulder, and the other one will be at the what arm. So that is just it. So if you enjoy watching this video and it's very, very helpful, please subscribe today, turn the notification bell to get notified anytime I upload a new video in this channel. Thank you and see you next time.